After years of HD graphics, immersive landscapes, and beautifully rendered worlds, it is hard for many modern gamers to go back to the classics. Games like Atari's Adventure, Ultima Underground, or even early games in the Elder Scrolls series. That's because these games required a little more from the player's imagination than most do today. As good as these games were, they couldn't feel like full, living, breathing worlds, at least visually. The technology simply wasn't there yet. There's one game, though, that couldn't be played on a PC or console, that didn't feature a single sprite or pixel. A game that only existed on a few pieces of paper and, most importantly, in the player's mind. Beloved by many modern fantasy writers, film directors, and of course video game developers, Dungeons & Dragons has helped shape the imagination of today's best artists. The Elder Scrolls series is definitely no exception. Game director Todd Howard has talked extensively about playing Dungeons & Dragons for the first time, saying that after he started, the next 3 hours were a revelation. It was like a new gateway into awesomeness was opened for me. It probably won't come as a surprise then that the world of Tamriel is filled with bits of inspiration taken from Dungeons & Dragons throughout the series. Let's start in Skyrim. Most of you will probably remember Mercer prying the eyes out of the giant Falmer statue in the final Thieves Guild quest. But what you may not know is this was actually a reference to the very first Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook, which depicts a very similar scenario on its cover. Or, how about in Oblivion, when a beggar will end a conversation with, "Blessings of Mystara upon ye." This left many Elder Scrolls fans confused. Who was Mystara? They were not referenced anywhere else in the game's lore. This is because the name doesn't come from the series. It comes from the name of the campaign setting of the most popular version of D&D in the 80s, undoubtedly one played by many Bethesda developers. That's not the only name that the Elder Scrolls took from Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, there's one that is very notable. Though new to the Elder Scrolls series, the word Dragonborn was actually featured in Dungeons & Dragons all the way back in 2006. A sentence that might as well have been all the way back when I graduated high school. Damn, I feel old. Where was I? Oh, right, the Dragonborn. It came from the supplement book, Races of the Dragon, and in the 4th edition of the D&D Player's Handbook, the Dragonborn emerged as one of the core player character races in the game. Dungeons & Dragons writer Gwendolyn Kestrel has said that the Dragonborn was created because players want as an option a race that captures the power and majesty of dragons. Bethesda apparently completely agrees. Not only are there references to D&D to be found in Skyrim, but there are references to specific D&D matches too. For instance, the Embershard Mine, found just up the road from Riverwood, contains a very obscure reference. In the popular Penny Arcade Dungeons & Dragons podcast, Will Wheaton, Jerry Hawkins, Scott Kurtz, and Mike Kralik played a comedic D&D session where Kurtz's character says that his dwarven dad stopped drinking because the Embershard family of dwarves stole their mine. A note found on a skeleton in the mine says almost the exact same thing, but with a Nordic, not dwarven theme. Another example of this can be found in the cave Liar's Retreat, where you will find a Breton named Rod dead on an altar, who carries a weapon named Longhammer. This is a reference to another popular D&D game that Will Wheaton played for Penny Arcade, in which Wheaton's character is rescued from hell along with an NPC named Rad Longhammer. So far, we've covered references and inspirations taken from D&D, but we haven't mentioned the most important link between it and the most recent entry into the franchise, The Elder Scrolls Online, a man by the name of Lawrence Schick. The official head lore master of the game, Schick was in charge of writing more than 2,000 in-game books, keeping the character name pronunciations correct, and just generally making sure that all the lore found in The Elder Scrolls Online matched that of the previous games. As a writer for the game, Schick has now had a huge impact on the franchise's lore himself. So what does this have to do with D&D? Well, back in the 1970s, Schick was the head of TSR, the publishing company behind Dungeons & Dragons. He designed many D&D modules and worked closely with Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons & Dragons. According to Schick, he and some of the other designers here have deep roots in early Dungeons & Dragons world settings. Most of us are old-school D&D guys. So, Dungeons & Dragons and Elder Scrolls might just have more in common than you'd think, because many of the people working on the series also helped create the most famous pen and paper role-playing game ever made. You thought you knew Elder Scrolls, but hopefully you learned just a thing or two more. Do you know any other historical or literary references we didn't cover here? Share them in the comment section below, and we might include it in a future episode. If you like hidden history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hi, this is Austin, the voice of Hidden History and co-host of GNN, and I added a new credit to my title, the He Who Made the Outro for the Elder Scrolls Lore series. Well, that's not the actual title, but you'll have to see what it's called. I've seen the pilot episode that is to be the first episode, and it is so good, you guys. It's really good, you guys.